I hope you're having a happy and safe 2021. This is Shui with a little bit of a wrap up of my personal selections for 2020. I'll just name some of my top picks for various reasons. Um, Overall, they would have to have a decent balance between traction, cushioning. Cushioning is most important for me. That's what basketball shoes are supposed to do compared to other shoes. Um, so let's get straight to it. In no particular order, I put these shoes as the top picks for 2020. So I'll be leaving out some of the shoes that I reviewed earlier, sometime during the end of 2019 or the very beginning of 2020. So this will be more recent additions, at least the shoes that's worn on NBA courts during the last season, possibly, and also the ones that's to come, or the ones that's being worn these days. So first of all, I would say Lebron 18 has been a big winner. Uh, the attempt they did with the full length Zoom Air, parts of it in the heel to fill in that hollow void of a typical max volume Air was a nice touch. Personally, I would have preferred the max volume Air to be a little bit slimmer, and then it would have been a bit lower to the ground with a dual density cushioning and impact and responsiveness that you could feel like nothing else. But this in itself was really quite an improvement compared to the LeBron 17s. The LeBron 17 had this really thick max Air that's not exactly giving, a bit too, I suppose, overinflated. The 18, it worked nicely in tandem with the full-length Zoom Air or the full-length Zoom Strobel on the forefoot as well. Instead of putting those Zoom pods that you can't really feel, the full-length Zoom worked nicely. Overall, it's a simple silhouette, low cut, and the outsole traction was good on the forefoot. The heel traction was a bit blunt. Wish that could have been improved, but of course what's more important is the forefoot traction. The price point, of course, it's LeBron's the most expensive Nike basketball shoes, possibly the ones they spent more time on in terms of R&D and using the more high-end, high-tier materials. So it's understandable. It's good. The biggest problem I had with it was the tongue had really coarse, rigid bits. Overall, the tongue was coarse and rigid and flat, and actually really digs into your foot. And the more you can't really tighten your laces tight because the fly wire or fly lace type of loops, they really kill you when you tighten it up. So personally, if you have the LeBron 18, what I would do is I put a thin layer of Poron or any kind of insole material that you can find right underneath the tongue. Then it's manageable. Other than that, that's a fatal flaw that LeBron 18s have. Slightly thinner heel air and maybe the same kind of traction pattern that you had in the forefoot on the heel would have been good. But I always find some ways to find reasons to complain about certain shoes, and LeBron 18 was what I expected and when they talked about the tech spec, and it delivered, and it's good, and it was worn by the biggest winner of the shortened season. Jumpman 2021. Jumpman 2020, I gave high praise to the shoe because it was a super budget model that actually was one of the better performers in terms of minimal but plush. The forefoot zoom there, you could feel traction was excellent, but 2020's flaw was the fit. The fit was really weird, very narrow, but if you go up a few sizes up, the toe box area has this huge space, so it was weird. Jumpman 2021 carries on that nice little foam midsole that actually works even though you have nothing in the heel. It actually is one of the more giving heel cushioning. The density has been controlled nicely for the foam cushioning, and on the forefoot zoom, it's more or less the same type of zoom unit you can feel as in the previous one. Jumpman 2021's biggest strength is that it actually fits more or less true to size. There is no crazy empty space on your toe box, or it's not crazy narrow. So narrow footers, you could go true to size. If you go up half a size, it fits just nice for most people. The traction is great, but 2020 traction was, I believe, a little bit better. Not a huge difference, but 2021, a budget model that's in some sense better than the actual model, the Jordan 35s. Harden 4 for Adidas makes the list because it was worn throughout the playoffs, and Harden 5 is technically, it should be out, but it's not easily available right now. But Harden 4 actually surprised me because Adidas does this thing where they always release different materials for different colorways. Usually that leads to a different fit, different lockdown, different weight, different breathability. For the Harden 4s, the McDonald's colorway fit better, and the light strike foam they used was better here compared to the Chinese New Year or the China edition, which had really narrow fit and it had a funky design. And the light strike midsole was not as plush as that color. Same applies for the barbershop color, the first colorway. It fit a little funky, and the midsole actually wasn't as giving. So Adidas is strange. Harden 4, the McDonald's colorway, for me, it worked great. Traction, of course, when you compare it to other Adidas models in recent years, that's been horrific in terms of their traction. Superior to that, but if you compare it to the top tier performers, it's a bit so-so, but definitely better than garbage like the recent Dames. Just the traction, of course. And Embiid 1, Under Armour. Embiid 1 was a surprisingly good shoe because Under Armour always try to implement their latest technology in their midsoles or whatnot. They always say, this is the most plushiest, this is the most responsive, this is the best cushion Under Armour shoes you've ever had for basketball, but it always did not deliver. The Curry 6, which first implemented, supposedly had the hover cushioning. You could feel a bit of it on the forefoot, and the heel was a little bit sunk and hard. For the Curry 7, they also said that it had hover, but I don't know how minimal it was. It was super low to the ground. You could feel a decent cushioning on the heel, but on the forefoot it was very minimal, almost like the insole seems to do most of the job for the cushioning. But the Embiid 1 was actually the first basketball shoe by Under Armour to actually have something soft and responsive, good shock absorption. Overall, it's the fit, and the fit is decent, and it doesn't have any chafing side effects like the Curry 7s had. And the traction was not bad, but it's sort of like follows a similar traction to the Under Armour Spawn Low 2. So that was a horrific traction. The more you use it, the more you slide. The grooves are designed to let you slip and slide. The Embiid is a little different, but unfortunately it could have been better. Traction is decent, okay, but it's not as good as the Curry 7s or some of the premier traction models that Under Armour has introduced in the past. So but the cushioning itself, it's a wow factor. Also, no outrigger. The forefoot base is not that wide, so there's a little bit of an ankle instability there. So that's something you need to watch out for. But overall, the price point was lower than Curry 7s, but they were better in many ways. The Anta KT5 though, it was fantastic. The KT4s were the first to actually implement their A-flash foam. They continued the tradition of having a solid outrigger to provide excellent ankle anti-inversion support, and the traction pattern continues. It's kind of similar to Jordan 23, but better. The traction grooves are deep, the blades are thick, and it's durable, and it's not sensitive to dust, and it bites nicely. The A-flash foam that you use is better. It gets better and better. From 4 to 5, it made quite a significant jump. Forefoot cushioning, you can feel heel cushioning that's not too high off the ground, but it actually absorbs shock, but not lets you sink down, so you will have a decent heel toe drop. The only problem was it catered to select type of foot shapes. For me, a guy who actually has to go up a full size for Kyrie's or half a size up for some Kobe models, because they have this little part on the lateral part near the pinky toe where it kind of cuts in a bit too tight. So for me, I had to go full size up, and even then I could feel a little bit of an irritation there. So because they have a rubber outrigger and the continuation of that material near your pinky toe area. So if it fits, great, it's an excellent shoe. But if it doesn't, you're not gonna get it seasoned or get it to break down to actually feel softer on your foot. If you try it and you feel a bit of an irritation or chafing, don't try it. But cushioning and traction is awesome. Speaking of Anta, the Rondo signatures that Rondo did not wear during the playoffs, the Anta RR6 was excellent. It featured a similar type of cushioning, or similar type of cushioning that felt similar to the KT5, except a little bit plusher. It was a little bit heavier. The traction was simpler than the KTs, but it was decent enough. The price point for both Anta models, it's very affordable, so that is good. But the RR6 problem is, again, it's fit. It's very spacious, kind of like some of the Adidas models where you don't know whether you should go down half a size or a full size down, and you still feel that vacancy on top of your toes. That's the RR6. And the lacing system it's designed to let you lock down every loop, but that actually doesn't really work great because you're really pulling hard, but you're not getting the lockdown that you want no matter how hard you pull it. So there are some limitations there. Puma All Pro was a surprise. Puma's never had a decent cushion basketball shoes until this point. I know the Clyde hardwood does get some love, but it was a little bit lacking. But the All Pro actually implemented Puma's own version of Boost, the energy foam, a little puck in the heel, but it actually worked nicely in tandem with the foam material they use overall. It's very low to the ground, but it provided adequate cushioning. Up to this point, I mean, by the time Puma All Pro was released, it was by far and away much better shoe among all the Puma models in terms of its design, its lightweightness, and fit. Traction, well, traction has always been good for most Puma shoes. It carries on the tradition of the Clyde hardwood, and the cushioning was markedly improved, but I wish they could have used the energy puck they used in the heel on some of the pivot point of the forefoot as well, but they didn't. But it's decent. It feels like a Kobe.